Hello, everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. Justice in a whiskey. March 21st, 1957. There is blood on the bed. His stomach ripped open, his left eye mutilated, and the side table is lying near the door frame. His wife is bawling her eyes out, and there is a half-empty bottle of whiskey under the bed. The cut on his body shows that he was attacked by a knife, and the incision is so clean, almost as if the murderer is an anatomy genius. The mouth of the body is gaping open, and his neck has purple splotches. My friend, who is an investigator, clicks photos from all angles. With each flash of the camera, I see a clue unfolding beside me. Officer Barn rushes towards me, his eyes speaking of a strange fear. He clasps my shoulder, urging me to come out of the room. I march out and stand near the doorframe, my eyes speaking instead of my tongue. "What's the matter, Barn?" I ask him, trying to hide the expression on my face. "We need to hurry. This case is a very high profile." He coughs up, interrupting himself. He's not an ordinary person. He is the son of a famous business tycoon. This case is no longer a government record. It's a public scandal. He huffs at the end. "I know he is the son of Mr. Edward, owner of the steel factory, but we cannot hurry it up, leaving clues to the rats." I breathe in with ease. We cannot delay it either. Mr. Barnes speaks up. "We need to fasten our belts and rush our brains before it goes out into the hands of the media." I nod my head and once again enter the room, observing each minute detail. I see a leaflet in the vase of flowers. I ask my assistant for gloves. I wear them and take the leaflet carefully from the flowers. It's a prescription. The ink is fading away in the water, but the logo on the paper is smudged, yet noticeable. "Sir, you can hand it over," the forensic officer says, pointing out to a plastic bag in his hands. I take the plastic bag from him and carefully put the leaflet in it. I fold the upper corner of the bag and place it on the left side of my coat pocket. "Sir, the evidence belongs in our department. I beg your pardon, but you have to hand it over to us." The forensic officer pleads with his eyes and places out his arm. "Even I have a small lab at my home. I would love to personally investigate in my space." I boldly put my statement forward. "I wish you could do that, sir. But since the case is high profile, we have to follow all the orders from our seniors and judiciary. I can't help you this time. I would love your cooperation more." I sign in defeat and take the bag from my right side of my coat and place it in his hand. He bows his head in respect and leaves the place. I go into the drawing room, where the wife of the victim is present. She has a lilac handkerchief in her hands and is wearing a black dress. Her eyes are red due to the constant crying, and her cheeks are soaked in due to her tears. She's surrounded by her neighbors and friends. I tell them to depart soon, to push my investigation forward. Everybody leaves, and Catherine gathers herself, aligning her back with her body. I sit a few inches apart from her, observing her delicate little hands, which no longer has the burden of the band. Miss Catherine, sorry for your loss. I know the departure of your husband is so unexpected, and I could understand your sorrow. She sobbed a little and quivered her lips. I hope my husband gets justice, sir. That's all I want. I want the culprit dead. Her eyes blazing with anger and deep sorrow. I take her hand in mine and say to her with a coy smile, "That will soon happen. I promise you." I could feel the coldness of the plastic in our hands. A week before, I could not take my eyes away from the bruise, which was on Catherine's left elbow. The wound itself is telling the backstory of its origin. She lifts my chin, directing my eyes towards her. Her hands were cold, and her little finger was swollen. Her eyes were dull, with no light or joy. "You called me here for something?" She questions me with disgrace and disregard. "Yeah, so I am going to dive in for cooking. You know, learning a few basic skills and recipes." I laugh at my lie and take out the tray of knives. "So, what are you starting with?" Her voice is cold like ice, and her eyes tired. She has a small brown patch near her eyelid, hinting at her life. I immediately try to distract myself from the bruise by balling my fists and digging my fingernails into my palms. I think with the stomach, cleaning and cutting will be far easier from here, I say, pointing out to the featherless chicken on the table. "That's interesting. So, what help do you need from me?" Catherine asks me. "Well, I don't know about the cleaning and cutting. Like, see this butler's knives? It's too big for the work. We don't need this, but this." I point out to the medium-sized scalpel with a sharp edge. "I think this will do. Precision cut and less mess." She nods her head, and a slow smile rises across her square face. Even I think so. I loved the way she smiled, always. By the way, have you read the 10th chapter of Volume 1 of Anatomy? I ask her, with my eyes focused on the scalpel. 3 weeks earlier. I always flunked chemistry. Thanks to you, otherwise I would be a technician in a hospital. I pass a gentle smile to Catherine. I don't know about the academics' chemistry, but your reaction with women was always volatile. She taunts with me, her gentle smile. Not all, only with one. But that reaction became highly toxic for everybody. Hearing my sharp words, her smile disappeared. I hate for causing an explosion in that research. If I had focused on one chemical, then my life would not have been so volatile. Her voice sounded disapproved. I miss my compound too. I sigh with disbelief. She turns away from her face and wipes her tears. I know it's so tough for her to gather the courage daily and to chalk out the plan. I try to lighten the mood surrounding us. The movie makers are so hypocrites, I shout. What? She turns around, but does not see me in the eye. They always show that when you place the chloroform on someone's face, the person instantly passes out. But it's not true. A person at least requires 15 minutes of continuous exposure for passing out to its fullest. Movies are for entertainment, not for knowledge, we say in unison. Out-timing makes me laugh, and she laughs seeing me laugh. By the way, Catherine, I want to say you an amazing fact. Do you know? Whiskey and chloroform have the same taste. She finally sees me in the eye and smiles. Now I know. And laughs like a small hyena. 4 weeks earlier, the church is calm and the benches are clean. It's Monday, hence the absence of people seems relevant. I smell the candles burning and could hear the faint sobbing from the room of confession. I walk towards it and open the stall. It was empty, but the nearby stall wasn't. I rotate my head around to see anyone's presence and finally steps in. Feeling the presence of my space, the sobbing discontinued. It's the result of my sin. If I hadn't cheated the person who loved me the most and did not break his heart, this would have never happened. Her voice breaks down, and through the thin mesh, I could guess her marble hands wiping the tears away from her face. The result, or the outcome of your sin, depends on the Lord itself. It's you and me who have the final decision. I have forgiven you already. But what about the devotion and love you offer him? Is his response appropriate? Does raising hand on your wife courageous? I sigh in dismay. But what are we going to do? Do you think your plan is proper? She questions my intentions. The law won't help us. His hands are long, and their pockets are full with his money. It's not about how I feel. It's about the justice you need. I face her across the mesh, digging my fingernails in my palm. I won't lose you because of somebody's treatment. I choke down my tears. She stands across the mesh, placing her hand on it. I do the same. A month ago, sir, there is a woman. She is stating emergency and needs urgent observation. Will you come soon? The nurse hurried her sentences. Can you call another doctor? I have completed my hours. I pack my suitcase and turn to leave. She says it's matter of life and death, sir. The nurses exclaim. Okay, fine. Only 15 minutes. Then transfer her case to Dr. Edmund. I wipe the sweat on my forehead and put on my white coat. Sometimes the Hippocratic oath becomes the death of me. I go to the patient's cubicle. I am in no mood to observe the patient. I remove the board placed near the bed and read the symptoms taken by the nurse. Internal bleeding in the cervix, partially choked, bruises on hand and near the eyes, lower lip cut, fracture on the wrist. Miss, when did this happen? And how can we aid you? I reply bluntly. My energy is on brink of exhaustion and pushed to my limits. A pale, cold hand catches my wrist, and a humble voice reaches my ear. Just forgive me, will you? My ears recognize it, and when I see her face, the blood in my body stills. I catch her limp hand and shout, "Catherine!" Tears were flowing down her eyes, and her face had lost the life and sunshine she had. All she could do was clasp my hand with more force. I kiss her knuckles and run my fingers lightly on the bruises. Seeing her in this state, my mind rattles. I clench my teeth, and tears of anger rush down my cheeks. Who did this to you? I ask her, trying to mask my anger. She gathers herself, and with the last courage within her, utters, "My husband." The Murderous Twins. The McKellen twins felt the librarian's stinky breath brush against their nape, so they quickly slid their dirt and blood-stained hands under the table. "Shut up, you two," hissed the librarian. "Sorry," said Milo McKellen, with the fakest of smiles. The librarian stomped back to his dimly lit desk, where he resumed his scribbling on a notebook. Occasionally, he raised his bald head to survey the hall like a living security camera. Martin McKellen peeked under the table. A few droplets of blood had stained his jeans, and now it would be impossible for him, or rather, his mother, if she hadn't been gone, to wash them away. They would become foolproof evidence, marked forever on his favorite pair of pants. A pale moonlight cast long shadows over the library hall, where the McKellen twins, still soaking wet from the rain, had found shelter. They had sat on one of the long benches, their hands and arms covered in dirt and blood. And now they were arguing. Their disagreement kept on drawing the attention of the librarian, who scowled at the twins and scolded them whenever they spoke a little louder. "See that corner over there?" Martin asked Milo. "Let's go talk there. He won't interrupt us." The twins tiptoed to a corner far from where the librarian sat, hoping to get more privacy. They were surrounded by books, as dusty as if no one had ever touched them except the person who had placed them there centuries prior. "So," said Milo. "What were we?" "The body," said Martin. "Yes, the body. I think we should have buried it instead of letting it sink into the lake," Martin snorted. "As if a hump of soil in the middle of the woods is something you see every day. Better than a dead woman in the trunk of her own car, if you ask me." What other options were there? I couldn't even think straight. Those damn blue lights. "Well, it's no use discussing this now," said Milo. "We got rid of her." Something hit the floor and echoed throughout the library hall. Martin peeped out. The librarian was kneeling near the bench where the twins were sitting earlier, and he was struggling to get back up. The ink from his fountain pen had bled in a large puddle onto the marble floor. And now the librarian was fumbling for a tissue to clean that mess with. Milo peeped too, and he said, "He'll be busy for a while." Martin leaned against the book-filled shelves and sighed. "We can't hide in a library forever, Milo." "I know," he said. "But we've got to at least wait for the rain to stop so that we can hop on a train and leave." "Where were you thinking?" Martin asked. Milo shrugged. "I don't know. Canada?" Suddenly, a clap of thunder boomed in the night sky outside, and the library's doors burst open. Martin looked over at the two men who had just entered the building. They were wet, just like the twins were, but they wore blue uniforms, like police officers, said Martin in a quivering whisper. "There's two of them. What do we do?" Milo whispered back. Martin shook his head. "I have no idea," he thought. He was afraid to even think at this point. "They came looking for us," said Milo. "No doubt about that. Otherwise, what would two police officers do in a library after hours?" "Hush, Milo," said Martin. "Please, don't let us be caught." "Good evening," thundered a voice. It was one of the two men. The twins cocked their ears. "I'm Agent Phillips, and this is Agent Clifford. We're looking for a couple of young men, probably in their 20s, red-haired, pretty thin." The librarian did not answer, so the other police officer, Clifford, urged him. "Have you seen someone with this profile by chance?" Martin held his breath. He prayed the librarian didn't reveal where he and his brother were hiding. Second by second, a thick silence was filling up the atmosphere, like a cake rising in the oven. Except this oven was far too hot, and this cake was about to explode. "Avoid us any trouble, Mr. Librarian," said Agent Phillips. "Just tell us if you've seen them or not, and we won't bother you any longer." Martin pushed Milo back into the corner and flattened himself against the bookshelves in case their cover was about to be blown. The librarian cleared his throat and spoke. "No," he said. "I haven't seen them." Martin and Milo gasped as quietly as they could and peeped out from behind the bookshelves once again. The two police officers were looking at one another. Clifford's eyes became two narrow slits, two poison darts he was now aiming at the librarian. "Are you sure?" said the agent. "Sure," said the librarian, trying to sound more sure than he was. "Very well," said Agent Phillips, nudging at Clifford. "Sorry to have disturbed you. We'll leave you now." But Clifford turned and pointed at the bench where the twins were sitting earlier. Under it, there was a mess of paper tissues and ink. And, "Look," said Martin to his brother. "The blood is gone." Milo looked down at the blood on his hands, by now dry, and then over at the bench. "What blood, Martin?" "When I hid my hands under the table, I spilled blood everywhere, on my jeans, on the floor." Clifford's voice boomed once again. "What's that over there, Mr. Librarian?" Agent Phillips grabbed his colleague by his arm. "Let's stop it here, Ben. He says he hasn't seen them. Clifford broke free of Philip's grip and fetched the heap of stained paper from the ground. He marched back to the librarian's desk, where the poor man was standing still, but frail, like a clay statue. Clifford unfolded one tissue and slammed it on the librarian's desk. It was stained with large blotches of blood. "What about this, Mr. Librarian?" Clifford scoffed. "Been dabbing the floor all night long, haven't you?" The librarian didn't move a muscle. He just stared at the stained tissue. "These kids have slaughtered their mother," Clifford roared. For a moment, all the books in the library seemed to have teetered, like there had been a severe but rapid earth tremor. "Clifford, calm down now," Agent Phillips commanded. He turned to the librarian. "Tell us the truth, sir. As you can see, this is pretty urgent." The librarian slowly pointed his index finger at the corner where the twins were hiding. Milo gulped, and Martin stopped breathing altogether. The two police officers looked at one another one last time. Agent Clifford pulled out 2 pairs of handcuffs, and Phillips led the way. When they reached the darkened corner, where the twins were supposed to be hiding, though, there were only rows of shelves full of dusty tomes to welcome them. "The Sins That Betray Us." It was a warm, Parisian evening, and fog rose from the Seine. It mingled with the smog of industry and clouded the gas street lights that dimly lit cobblestone streets. Beside the Seine, in the 4th arrondissement, was La Force prison, within which was the man Eugène Vidocq, whose wrists were shackled to the dungeon wall by cold steel chains and ankles bound by manacles. Eugène had black, curly hair and long, thick sideburns that taunted the corners of his mouth. He wore rags. His nose was still bruised from the scuffle to detain him when 5 men were needed to pin him down and capture him. "Monsieur," he said, speaking to Julien de Veria, the Parisian chief of police. "I became a criminal the night my father had me arrested as a boy. When those gendarmes had turned up and taken him away to a cell that night, he had felt betrayed, devastated, and humiliated by his father. Above all, he had felt angry, and that anger had stayed with him all his life, a chip on his shoulder that had been ever present in his interactions and informed his life choices. Julien sat in the opposite corner of the dungeon on a wooden stool. His top hat lay in his lap, and his walking cane leant against the wall. He remained as still as a gargoyle. "Your trial for treason commences at first light, and you wish to reminisce about your father. Do not waste my time." The flame of torches lining the walls flickered. A rat scurried between iron bars and retreated into the shadows. "I have watched the guillotine sever the head of my dear friend César Herbeau. This cannot be my fate." He shook his head. The surprised look upon César's face as his head fell to the ground was forever etched in his memory. He could not shake it. could not recall how Cesar used to smile, or the jovial times they had shared in local brothels. You have deserted from the army. You have stolen, you have forged, and you have destroyed marriages. Why would I care about your fate? Orange from the flickering flames glinted in Julian's eyes. A distant scream echoed around the chamber. It briefly registered to Eugène, like the sound of a new prisoner being subdued into his iron attire. Monsieur, I crave a life no longer on the run, said Eugène, thinking of his recent arrest. His estranged wife, who left him for a soldier, had found him back in Paris and reported him to the gendarmerie. He could never be free while the sins of his past stalked his being. Such is the fate of a criminal. Why would I care about what you crave? You are wasting my time, Julian said, snatching up his cane and smashing it against the stone wall. He stood. Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, let me tell you what I can do for you, so as not to waste any more of your time. Julian pushed out the backs of his jacket and sat carefully on his stool. Proceed. Thieves adore me. Hardened wretches esteem me. I drink and mingle in their circles. I have their trust. I know their hearts. I will gather their secrets and share them with you. We have informants already. Why would I need you, monsieur? I will be the best of them all. Of your informants, do any have as much esteem amongst the other criminals? Of your informants, have any been as cunning as me to escape prison so many times, even dressed as a nun to avoid detection? Sir, I will go to lengths those simpletons could not even imagine imagining. I will be your best informant, monsieur. I know this without a doubt, and I think you do too. I can't trust you, monsieur. When my late father had me arrested as a boy, my fate was sealed. In my mind, I became a criminal. It has taken my whole life to realize he did that out of love. I can be different. I can be of use to society. I can be the man my father knew I could be. I don't know if you can, monsieur. I've seen the end. I've seen my friend's head freed from his body by guillotine. I know that God's grace has all but kept me alive. I will be as devious as I was in crime, but use those skills to catch the criminals and make Paris safer. He shook his head. Just as the rats carry the plague, I fear you spread a vile truth. Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, just give me one last chance. Please. Julian was silent. We will hold off your trial in the morning. But know this, you are one mistake from execution. I want intelligence, actionable intelligence, or you'll be seeing your father sooner than you had imagined. He stood, gathered his cane, placed his top hat on his head, and waved to a guard outside the cell to let him out. Eugene put his head back on the stone wall and blinked away a tear. He would be tireless. He would be disciplined. He would use the tricks and the cons and the black arts he had learned. It was clear that Julian barely believed what was said, but that was fine, because he knew what was there in his heart. And it was true, and with time, he would prove it. He felt the anger that had fueled his heart for so long start to thaw. The miserable wretch that was his soul felt a flicker of hope. His father had loved him and had wanted him to be the best he could be, no matter how tragically he had tried to teach that lesson. And now he understood that it was only ever a lesson. He could become the man his father knew he could be. The big crime investigators at the Gustav Adolf Lutheran Church in New Sweden, Maine. In 2003, a mass poisoning there sickened more than a dozen congregants, killing one. Credit: Joel Page, Associated Press, by the New York Times, April 7th, 2020. All true crime stories start as crime reporting, often in the daily newspaper, before the narrative is shaped for your streaming device, earbuds, or bookshelf. The facts are gathered by a journalist. What happened? Where and when? Who is the victim? And do the police know who did it? Any journalist who has covered crime has stories they can't shake. These tales can be harrowing, bizarre, or even, in rare circumstances, oddly inspirational. We asked our journalists to share the ones they still think about, even decades later. Ellen, Barry, Boston, bureau chief. Someone put arsenic in the coffee after a church service in New Sweden, Maine, sickening several congregants and killing one. I was sent up there in 2003 by the Boston Globe to the far reaches of Aroostook County. It was both quaint and horrific. Someone trying to kill their neighbors. Eventually, it emerged that one of the ushers had done it, as revenge for losing a theological battle. As the population in that area drained away, two small Lutheran churches were consolidated into one. Identical to outsiders, the two churches had what was for them a deeply significant doctrinal difference. In one, the priest faced the congregation when blessing the host. In the other, the priest faced the altar. The poisoner had lost that battle. He ultimately killed himself. It was a grim story about the dilemmas of those stretches of our country that are losing population, having to let go of their particular identity. Have a true crime story to share? Tell us about the crime that haunts your memory. Feb. 27, 2020. Linda Richardson, Senior Staff Editor. Travel. Eddie Brown began running in a snake-infested Florida swamp in 1952. In the 44 years after he escaped from a chain gang while serving a robbery sentence, Mr. Brown worked, raised children, and lived quietly in East New York. But he was always shadowed by the gnawing fear that his past would catch up with him. I covered his case as a Metro reporter in 1996. But lately, I've been thinking a lot about the chain gang fugitive, having recently read about the racial horrors of the Jim Crow South in Colson Whitehead's The Nickel Boys. Eddie Brown's past resurfaced after he was in a minor car accident, and the police ran a routine check that showed he was wanted in Florida. He was taken away in handcuffs. Florida initially requested his extradition, and New York law enforcement officials began the proceedings. Mr. Brown spent nearly 40 days in the Brooklyn House of Detention before he was released on $1,000 bail. It was an immensely satisfying moment to see him walk out of the courthouse, finally a free man, as a sea of news photographers with flashing cameras and reporters, more than I've ever seen, awaited him. Dig deeper into the moment. Special offer. Subscribe for $1 a week. Dan Barry, domestic correspondent. When I worked for the Providence Journal many years ago, I often wrote about the mobsters who were very much present in that Rhode Island city. You knew that this was Social Club, this was Baby Shanks's Cafe, and this was the place where Old Man, the boss, used to run everything. You also knew that two men connected to a certain restaurant had made a guy named Joe Onions disappear long ago, but had never revealed where they had laid him to rest. Fast forward to 2008. One of the men is dead, and the other is dying. The police pick him up on a nickel and dime charge and ask for the umpteenth time, where is Joe Onions buried? To their shock, he agrees to spill. I have strong ties still to the state, and when I heard about this case, it sounded like a short story about an old wise guy who decides to go out by doing the right thing. I had to write it. Nicholas, domestic correspondent, investigations. The century-old department store stands 8 stories tall, but looms even larger in the German consciousness. A short walk from the old New York Times bureau where I worked in West Berlin, the luxurious shopping destination is a symbol both of Berlin's roaring 20s and the country's post-war economic miracle. So when I learned that there had been a jewelry heist, with the thieves caught on the surveillance camera, lowering themselves into the store on a rope ladder, evading the motion detectors, and making off with millions of dollars worth of jewels, I knew it was a big crime story on the biggest stage. My contacts in the Berlin Police Department told me that the thieves had made just one mistake, leaving behind a glove at the scene with DNA inside. A good story needs a twist, but a great story boasts two. The DNA evidence led not to a single suspect, but a pair, identical twins, identified as 27-year-old Hassan and Abbas O. The German justice system couldn't lock them both up, and each could claim the other did it. So, they walked. It may not have been the perfect crime, but it was a pretty sweet alibi. Alan Reporter. Metro. A Bronx man spent 25 years in prison for a rape he did not commit. Why? Because a witness accidentally took the police to the wrong apartment, one and not 16, and the police arrested and prosecuted the man they found there. Fernandez, Houston, Bureau Chief. One night in 2006, a police officer in the Bronx responds to a fight at a White Castle. He rolls up and sees a man with a gun kneeling over another man in the parking lot. He tells the gunman to drop the weapon, but the gunman doesn't respond. The officer opens fire, and the gunman is critically wounded and later dies. The gunman, it turns out, was a fellow officer, an off-duty Bronx policeman who was intoxicated and had just been beaten up by a group of guys at the White Castle. It's the mistaken identity that gets me. You can freeze frame the shooting as the bullets in the air and study it. There are worlds upon worlds of fate, mystery, and human connection at play. These two officers worked at station houses nearly 2 miles apart, and yet here they were, drawn together in a few tense, confusing seconds in a fast food parking lot. As I wrote, in this city, people live their whole lives separated by such short distances and never once cross paths. I don't think the officer was ever prosecuted for the shooting. I think it was ruled a justified shooting. But how does a cop live with a thing like that and move on? Yes, 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 yes. Armando, Deputy Editorial Director, Syndication. Hi. This unsolved case, in which 7 people, including children, were shot point blank during a robbery inside a bowling alley, has been a cloud over a small New Mexico city near the Mexican border for decades. 4 of the victims were killed. A 12-year-old victim, shot in the head, managed to call 911. And no arrests have ever been made. I grew up in the area, and it has been a source of sorrow and local mythology ever since it happened in 1990. In fact, the brutality of this crime over a few $1,000s, the massive law enforcement response, and the fact that no credible witnesses have ever come forward to identify suspects, all we want to hear about a crime that haunts you, a story that shook you, your town or community, and possibly changed lives. We are starting a project that will deeply examine crimes around the United States, the kinds of stories that too often go untold or have largely been forgotten. The crimes can be solved or unsolved, decades in the past or more recent. The crime may have been violent or involved financial or political wrongdoings. It may have implicated law enforcement or corporations. We are particularly interested in stories that may have gotten local coverage or not, but didn't rise to national consciousness. Rayner Kelly's Murder Soulmate. people are fools. This was a thought he'd held on to since he was a boy, and it had held true for his entire life till that point. Even as Rayner drove on the roads of his favorite mountain range, he could only think back to the sorts who proved it to him. Those sorts of people he couldn't even be angry at. The kind of idiots that got themselves lost in his favorite places. It wasn't as if he cared for any particular demographic. He liked to hurt them more if they were pretty, more so if they were tame. But he was always one for opportunity. That might have been how he managed his body count. Serial killers without a known type are harder to catch, as far as he'd heard. Though, considering how high the body counts were for easier cases, he had his reservations. It could have been how he killed. While he wasn't exactly messy, he didn't try to be fancy with his targets. He'd done it before. Long, drawn moments with strangers in discreet, abandoned places. But when all was said and done, he was careful. That. And he was a fairly big guy. He was a hard man to escape. Made his marks all the more foolish for trusting him. It wasn't all that late when he happened upon his next mark. A young man, inching to it, really, with a lovely mop of hair just by the side of the road. "Hello, sir. I kinda sprained my ankle. Could you drive me to a gas station or something?" the kid asked softly. He looked embarrassed by the entire situation. Rayner liked that, so he opened his passenger door for him. The kid was asking, after all. He watched as the kid arranged himself on the passenger side, careful to buckle himself in. The kid seemed a mite more cautious now, considering his ankle. Rayner started after that, taking his merry time since the kid wasn't worrying directions. "So, what had you so far out?" Rayner asked with a sideways glance. The kid had been looking out the window, contemplating something, before glancing over to him. "Oh, nothing much. Just the scenery," the boy said. "Is it all right if I do some writing here?" "I don't exactly have a charging setup," Rayner said, still playing the Samaritan. The kid took out a small journal. "Sorry to disappoint. I'm a bit old school," he said, trying to look cool. He kinda did if Rayner were at all honest. Rayner could have driven with his eyes closed, but he still only looked over occasionally, seeing the kid scribble away on a relatively clean page in his book. "So, what do you like to write about?" "Bodies." "Oh, what kind of bodies?" he asked innocuously. "Anybody, anything." "Oh," he said, hoping for something more specific. It was well enough that the kid was mostly quiet after that. Rayner wasn't so over-curious of this next body. Couldn't be that clever this far out. Didn't stop him from being a bit disappointed with the answer, what they were, rather than the state they were in. He was still a bit mesmerized with the kid, scratching away on a half-empty journal he was never gonna fill. He wondered, like any man oughta, how the kid managed to see anything past his fringe. But it seemed weird to impose on something like that. That mop would be safe enough to cut when the kid was dead, if he was really in the mood for a trophy. Beyond that, it was the kinda night he wanted to take slowly. The kid was marked for it. Rayner liked to take it slow sometimes. I still gotta wonder what got you out so late. I thought I told you. Oh, whatever, the kid whispered, before asking, is it all right to say I've got terrible friends? Well, hey, we've all been in bad crowds before, Rayner stated. He liked getting him out of the shell before the fun. Yeah, Rayner couldn't see where the kid was looking. I don't think I caught your name. No, you didn't. Be fair, I didn't catch yours either. Ah, I'm Callum. Let me guess. Your mom had a thing for soap operas? No, saints, actually, the kid corrected with a laugh. My mom had a thing for cryptids. Rayner paused at the non sequitur, thinking over what to say. He could be honest, tell the kid his name, hear that begging catch on his throat later. Or he could lie, make him guess. It won't matter if I don't know your real name, you know, the kid said, catching his apprehension. Rayner stopped to think about where they were, where the closest safe house was, before saying, no, I was just surprised. I'm Rayner Kelly. Because he liked the kid's voice. The kid was quiet after that, the only noise from the passenger side being the press of pencil to paper, the sound of a zipper. Then, as if struck by something, he felt a sharp presence through his leg, reacting with a hit to the face, which knocked the kid out. Without much thought as to the proper thing to do, Rayner pulled the knife out. Rayner felt his own hot blood flow from his thigh, and all he could think was, the little maniac stabbed me. He looked down at his leg, realizing that the kid, with all the luck, nicked something proper. He stole the kid's belt, since he was still out, and made a tourniquet. Frazzled by the entire ordeal, he decided to push the kid out the passenger side and step it to the nearest hospital. A night held up in the emergency room was an interesting addition to his night, just as the injury to his femoral artery was. It was a lucky break, not dying from it, but the kid was still out there. He'd done something foolish, and while Rayner wasn't especially scared of getting caught, he didn't like being blindsided like that. It would be a while after that before he'd think of it again. When he cleaned out his car, Rayner, having killed on the go before, knew that anything could drop from a body. Licenses, gum, IDs, and phones were some of the most incriminating. So he really couldn't afford to keep a dirty car. That's when he found the journal, the last thing the kid dropped before trying to get the drop on him. It was a small, leather-bound notebook, and while at once familiar in the light of day, he could see the character of its use. Kid was careful closing it before pulling that nonsense, and while his car had been a mess for a while, the pages were mostly clean. He flipped through, looking for IDs that might incriminate, and when he couldn't find any, he thought to throw it away. Even without something concrete, the book was filled with the kid's writings, and being by hand, his composition and identity could be ascertained. It was the kinda circumstantial evidence detectives and juries ate up. With the car no longer in disarray, he could throw it out, forget about the one night where the tables almost turned. Altogether again, he thought of the journal, of his hands and head. This was all he was gonna have of that. And for once, amongst the dark thoughts and bad memories, he wanted to keep it. It was only then did he read it. Page upon page of poetry. And though it was the simplest thing it could be, he was infatuated with it. The first page, dated a decade before, I am beauty. I am soft, a crooked rumble. To strange human love, she wonders fondly, where are you, dear, while I am dry and rotting here? I am claws. I am fear, a hissing mess to his cruel intent. I am flesh. I am bones. The kid was killing cats back then, writing poetry about it even. Rayner was taken back to his first experiments, neighborhood pets, and the like he dispatched out of curiosity. Though the kid never wrote his age or full name in any of them, he could tell that it was quite a bit more than poetry. It was something he'd never thought to do. Write about them with this intense distance. Some were short and recent. I am small. I am buzzing. My life is sweet. My stripes are fuzzy. Inside, I'm soft. My stingers not. None are things the dead can flaunt. Before he knew it, he felt familiar with the kid, like he was more than a liability, as close as a journal scratched halfway through. It really was anything, anybody, to him. I am lovely. I am strong. My tendons were cut. My fat is gone, lost beneath 2 or 3 feet. There are no feelings the dead get to keep. Rayner thinks, reading through Callum's poetry book, about that night and how it went. Every little lie that he didn't bother telling. How ready he was after saying his name. He wonders, what'll I do when I'm on the prowl again? Hungry for new pretty faces. How long before he thinks about the kid as just a liability again, and not the one that got away. Reyes. Murder case. The doorbell chime filled the anxiety-spilt air. Clemency and I both exchanged nervous looks. We both knew who it was. I walked up to the door while she arranged a few drinks. Oh, welcome. Mr. Wright. Please take a seat. I greeted the young man. He was wearing a blue suit and tie, left parted hair, and a shaved beard. Mr. Wright sat comfortably on the foam, glaring at the drinks in front of him, but did not dare to have one. So you're Clemency Cook? He asked, cocking a brow towards me. I left a foolish chuckle and pointed at Clemency. No, she is. The lawyer's balls danced from me to Clemency's face while she stood near the dining table, trying hard not to blush. After all, Mr. Wright was a handsome youth. Mr. Wright adjusted his collars and asked Clemency to sit in front of him. He cleared his throat and began. Your name is Clemency Bailey Cook, am I right? Yes, sir. The gentleman forwarded his hand and was replied with a firm shake of Clemency's. My name is Ian Wright, senior lawyer from Rake Walker's. Am I right that you saw, He glanced at some papers and continued. See a Reyes being brutally murdered in front of your eyes? Yes, sir. When did this happen? Around 1 a.m. on August 21st. What were you doing at such an odd time at Chargine Road, Memphis. Clemency pressed her lips into a thin line and looked at me. I signaled her to spill the truth. The night before, my boyfriend broke up with me. So in tears and scars, I decided to hit the club. On my way back, I saw, Ian nodded, as if he had gone through the same and understood her pain. Would you like to give some details? I could tell Clemency was not liking this. She never wanted to see the lawyer. It was me who pushed her. As a responsible citizen, and of course, when you are innocent, you should not fear to reach the hands of laws. It is for the betterment of all. Clemency took a deep breath and said, I was all head over heels with wine and was fumbling through the dark streets when I saw them, harshly stabbing the teen, while her screams echoed all around the place. The murderers saw me, but I was drunk, so they might not have expected me to remember anything. But that's what makes me different. No matter how unconsciously befuddled I am, I remember everything. Mr. Wright bent a bit forward. His eyes sparkled a doubtful glint. Do you remember the Terminator's face? Yes, but I didn't know who it was. Ian took out some inked photos from his bag and displayed them all together, like a pack of cards. Any one of these? Clemency thought for a second, biting her lips when she finally pointed at a man's photo, disguised in a scruffy beard and smooth eyes. He wore dazzling spectacles and a cowboy hat. Hard to believe he was cruel enough to cut his employer's salary. Murder was far off. Just one, Ian said, analyzing the chosen photo. No, there were two, but you only have one man's photo. Okay, we will work that out. Ian turned towards me and said, bring this lady to the court tomorrow. She will be a powerful witness. I nodded my head in agreement and waved the officer goodbye. After a few hugs and words of appreciation to Clemency, I walked the way to my house. I'll pick you up tomorrow for the trial. My last words read, Chagda. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Calling the case of the murder of Sia Reyes versus Charles Young. Are both sides ready? The judge's thundering voice alarmed all the ears. I have never been in a trial before, so it was all new. Yes, my honor, came a reply from Ian and his opposition. Your honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant has been charged with the crime of murdering a 17-year-old girl named Sia Reyes from St. Crim's School in the middle of the Chargine Road, Memphis, on August 21st. Your Honor, I would like to call my first witness, Alice Reyes, elder sister of Sia Reyes, for a few questions. Let Alice Reyes be presented in the court, the judge announced, thumping his gavel on the wood. Alice Reyes gets presented. I am so sorry about your loss, Miss Reyes. As per my information, you live with your... He gets uncomfortable for a second, but hides it with a cough. Late sister and your mother, about 60 kilometers from Chargine Road. Am I correct? Yes, came a sore voice from her throat. What made her go to the Sharjah road? She got a call in the middle of the night from his friend Charles Young, saying he had met with an accident and needed immediate help, and he did not know who else to call. Ian turned towards the judge and said, "My lord, as you can see, Sia was cleverly trapped into coming to the Charjan road with a 60-kilometer drive without giving it a second thought." "Objection, my lord," came a voice from the lawyer in defense. "Objection sustained," said the judge. The person in opposition stood up and said, "My honor, my client, Charles Young did not call Sia Reyes in the middle of the night. They have not been in contact for a couple of days now. Here is the call, History of Sia Reyes," handing the bailiff the proof. The judge nodded as he went through the papers. "My lord, I would like to call my other witness, Miss Clemency Cook, through which it would be clear that Mr. Young was involved in the murder," Ian said. "Let Clemency Cook be presented in the court," the judge repeated, hammering his gavel. I was sitting among the public, and I could feel the environment tense. A small smirk played on Ian's face. "So, Ms. Clemency, were you present on the Sharjah road around 1 a.m. on 21st August? "Yes," Clemency replied. I could feel every nerve in my body jolt up. I was really getting excited. Now that famous Charles gotta get infamous. I felt my blood screaming yuppie from the inside. It feels so good when guilty people get punished. "Did you see Charles Young brutally murder Sia Reyes?" Everybody's brows lifted up at the second. "No, I did not see anything except a lifeless body lying in the middle of the street." I was left shaken. Ian and I glanced at each other in shock. "What?" "But during our discussion, you said..." Ian tried to protest. "Enough. Any other points from any side?" The judge yawped. The court fell silent. The gavel declared the adjournment of the court, leaving everyone standing in their seats, ready to get out of the courtroom. Clemency was smart to get out fast, but I caught her arm just in time and pulled her in a corner. "What was that? Why did you lie?" I said, trying to keep my voice low, but my temper was breaking its bounds. "What? Oh, right. Listen, girl, you're too innocent for this world. This world runs on money. I got paid for it. Now get lost. I have other work to do." A new voice inside of Clemency spoke. I couldn't believe she just said that, uprooting all my faith in law and humanity in just a couple of seconds. My eyes fell on Alice, who was staring at me as Clemency walked away. I was too shattered to face her. All I could do was mouth, "I am sorry. Thank you, everyone, for reading my story. I have never really attended any court session or have any idea how it works. It is based upon my understanding on basis of bits of information from movies and series. Please forgive me if my context is not similar to the actual process. Regards, Kea, a life of regret. When Raj had stealthily installed the iSpy 200 Vision Plus device on his wife's prescription glasses 2 weeks ago, he had no idea the device would enable him to watch and hear from her perspective, in a way, relive her last day alive. It was this morning Raj had received the Blue Dart courier with the pen drive containing the recording of the last day of Mira's life, her first and only day of wearing her glasses with the iSpy installed, just before the horrific car accident in which her car had been hit on the rear by another fast-moving vehicle. The police believed it to be a truck or a bus. Mira's Ford Endeavor had spiraled out of control and plunged into the river beside the road where she had drowned before she could be rescued. When her car had been pulled out, Raj had collected her things, including her glasses, and sent them to the technical facility of the iSpy Corporation in Mumbai, where the team had extracted the audio and video recorded on the device and mailed the file to Raj on a pen drive, along with a hefty check for their services. Taking a deep breath, Raj poured himself a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, which also happened to be Mira's favorite wine, for he needed his courage for what he was about to do. 3 large gulps and soothing warmth in his throat equipped him the nerve to plug in the pen drive and click on the folder dated July 24th, 2021. Wondering what their 16-year-old daughter Hina would think of this blatant breach of his wife's privacy, Raj pressed the play key. The world came into focus with dainty hands with black painted fingernails placing the glasses over a nose. The camera panned to the left and focused on the other side of the bed, where a portly man lay sleeping with his mouth slightly agape. Raj watched the laptop screen with his heart racing as Mira leaned closer and kissed his bearded face before wrapping her gown around her body and proceeding towards the bathroom. He paused and watched the affectionate gesture again, frowning. He must have been fast asleep because he didn't remember his wife kissing him in the past 3 months. Not since his near-fatal heart attack. Was there a corner of her heart that still loved him, even though she was cheating on him? Raj shrugged the thought away, and taking another sip of the wine, resumed playing the video. In the bathroom, Mira placed her glasses on the bathroom sink while she proceeded to undress and step into the shower. For a few moments, Raj hated himself for lowering the laptop screen. This wasn't why he was spying on his wife, and somewhere in his heart, he knew he was violating her privacy after she was dead, which made it worse. But then he lifted the screen once again to watch his wife bathing, still as glorious at 43 as she was 20 years ago when they had first met. Raj couldn't credit her genes for her fitness levels, for her 2 sisters were both overweight and looked 10 years older than their age. The credit was all Mira's. She loved swimming in the clubhouse and sweating it out in their backyard with her 10-kilogram kettlebell. With a twang of shame, Raj glanced at the tires of fat around his waist, which made it impossible to see his feet without leaning over. Maybe he deserved a wife who cheated on him. After all, he had completely let go of himself over the past 10 years. A factor, his doctor proclaimed, had contributed to Raj suffering a massive heart attack at 46, despite having no history of heart disease. Mira put on her glasses as she emerged from the bathroom and got dressed in a navy blue suit for her office meeting. Each Monday, she had a meeting with her boss, a man she detested but tolerated because it allowed her to provide for her family. As she combed her long, wavy hair and effortlessly styled them into a chignon, Raj caught his own reflection in the mirror on the chin behind her, a middle-aged, unshaven, unemployed man perched on the edge of the bed, wistfully watching his beautiful and successful wife, who was everything he wasn't. Did he feel resentful towards her? Was it her fault she had done well in her life, while he had simply failed at everything he tried? Was it love that still kept them together? Or was she only with him for the sake of their teenage daughter? "I'm going to be late today," she said, without glancing at her husband. Today's the last date for the submission of the RFP response, and Kana would expect me to finish it before I finish my day. "How late?" he asked desolately. "Late," she said firmly, giving him an icy stare. "Eat your dinner if I'm not home by 8. I hope you can manage to feed yourself and Hina." It was more of a statement than a question. Raj heaved himself from the bed with much effort. "Let me get breakfast started. I'll eat in the office. Anyway, I can't eat anything before my Monday morning meeting. You know that." Through the camera, Raj saw his own sorry figure as Mira grabbed her purse and laptop bag and left the room without another word to him. She paused by their daughter's room, and after a perfunctory knock, opened the door and stepped in, closing the door behind her. Raj remembered sticking his ear to the door, eavesdropping on their conversation. But all he had heard were some muffled noises, as though they were deliberately trying to keep their voices down. It had started 2 months ago, when one night, Raj had woken up to find his wife's side of the bed empty, and loud arguing noises coming from their daughter's room. As he had tiptoed to Hina's room, he heard his wife yelling, "Do you know how old you are? I'm 16. I'm not a child anymore." "You're just 16. You're still a child. You cannot do this." "I can and I will," the daughter had argued back. "I forbid you." And on the argument had fired back and forth between mother and daughter, until Raj had stepped into the room and both had frozen, and then sputtered an apology for waking him up. Docilely, Hina had apologized to her mother, and Mira had embraced her daughter. But Raj had sensed that it was just a temporary ceasefire owing to his heart condition, and the real issue between mother and daughter was not yet resolved. When he had probed about the subject of the argument, both had dilly-dallied without giving him the truth. While he appreciated their concern for his health, Raj wanted to be part of important discussions affecting their daughter and wasn't happy with being left out. Now he watched keenly as Mira stood facing their daughter, Hina, who was still in bed as it was early for school. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mira said warmly. Hina, a scrawny 16-year-old girl with crazy curly hair, mumbled a good morning from under the covers. "I was leaving for office. I wanted to talk to you before I go," said Mira, sitting on the edge of the bed. Hina sat up on the bed, rubbing her eyes. "Yes, Mom. Is everything okay? Is Dad okay?" Raj's heart swelled with happiness at the concern he heard in his daughter's voice for his health. While not the most affectionate or expressive person in the room, Hina did show her love occasionally through her gestures. Mira sighed deeply. "Your dad's fine. He's recovering, you know. We can't let anything stress him out." Raj thought Hina looked away guiltily at her mother's words. "You know what I'm talking about, right?" Mira pressed on. "Yes, Mom. Have you met him again? Outside classes?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure, Mom." Mira's gaze dropped to the bed cover, and her delicate fingers smoothed out the covers. "I know you went to his house on Friday." Hina's expression was that of a deer caught in the headlights. I went to his house to say goodbye," she stammered. Mira's sigh was deep and audible. "I want to believe you. Really, I do. But I can't. You've broken my trust, Hina." Hina was now almost in tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom. But really, I had gone to his house for the last goodbye. I'll never see him again. Except at school, of course, where I can't avoid him." "Good. You know, once your dad is better, we'll do something to fix this problem permanently." Hina's ears perked up at the suggestion. "What do you mean, Mom?" "I mean, there's more we can do to fix this problem. I don't want to do anything right now because of your dad's precarious health. But once he's better..." At this, Hina threw the covers and jumped out of bed. "You can't punish him, Mom. It was my fault as much as his. Promise me you won't do anything." Mira rose, placing the strap of her laptop bag across her chest. "I'm not promising anything, sweetheart. Let's talk about our options in a few weeks' time. Until then, if you see him again outside class, I'll know right away." Hina stared at the wall clock behind her mother's head. "I won't see him like I promised." Raj's mind galloped to process the new information he had learned about his daughter. She had a boyfriend. Apparently, a boy from her class. Was that the reason for the strife between his wife and his daughter? Or was there more, he wondered, as he fast-forwarded the part of Mira's day where she attended her Monday morning meeting with her boss and worked in the office. Everything about the exchange surprised him, because he was the overprotective parent, constantly worrying about every little thing regarding their daughter, while Mira was more of a liberal parent who allowed Hina to experiment and even encouraged mistakes, even though he thought it inadvisable for young people to date before 18. What Hina was going through was completely natural and expected. Why had his wife freaked out so much on finding out about Hina's boyfriend? Resuming the video from the point where Mira got into her Ford Endeavor after leaving office, Raj watched keenly as she checked her freshly applied lipstick in the rearview mirror and used her dainty hands to smooth her hair and tuck some wild strands behind her ear. She turned on the ignition and began driving in a direction opposite to where their home was located. When the police had questioned Raj about where his wife was returning from that fateful day, he had surmised that perhaps she had taken a detour to the market to shop for something for their daughter's upcoming 17th birthday, and maybe she had liked something but wanted to discuss with her husband before buying the gift. Raj wasn't quite sure what had prevented him from sharing his suspicions with the police that his wife was probably having an affair and was returning from a rendezvous with the other man. It was probably as a token of respect for their 18-year-old marriage and consideration for their daughter that Raj had kept his suspicions to himself. With rapt attention, Raj watched the curve of the river hugging the road and the familiar city roads zipping past the fast-moving vehicle. As he expected, the car moved through the South City Market and towards the residential area next to it. Mira parked the car behind a dented Mahindra XUV 500 parked in the parking space and stepped out with her purse over her shoulder. She rummaged through her purse for something, and apparently not finding it in there, she leaned into the car, opened the glove compartment, and extracted a pepper spray. With the pepper spray ensconced in her purse, she marched to the front door and rang the bell. The pepper spray confused Raj. If she was going to meet her lover, he'd have expected her to be rummaging in her purse for something other than a pepper spray. The heavy brown door was opened by a balding man with horn-rimmed glasses on his nose. Mr. Segal? Hina's physics teacher? Was Mira having an affair with him? She detested the man and had even argued with him over some marks after the first term examination results. Nothing made sense. The man's face deflated on seeing the visitor. Raj thought Segal looked shocked to the point of being afraid on seeing Mira. Surprised? Said Mira. Why? Were you expecting my daughter? I don't know what you're talking about, the man stammered. I know you've been having a romantic relationship with my underage daughter. The man inhaled deeply. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have proof. Those letters you wrote to her. I found them, and I immediately knew they weren't written by a boy, but by a grown-up man. How could you do this? You're at least 50 years old. You disgust me. The man's nostrils flared with fury. Listen, you can't come to my doorstep and accuse me of something I haven't done. You need to leave, he said, beginning to close the door. Mira's ring-studded hand stopped the door from closing. I am leaving, but not before I warn you to stay away from my daughter. If you try to talk to her outside the class again, I'm going to inform the police. The only reason I haven't already contacted them is that Hina begged me. She begged me to let it go, and... Mira paused. The man was peering from behind the half-closed door with his narrowed eyes. And what? Mira sighed deeply. And nothing. I'm not calling the police right now because of my husband, who is ill. I don't want him to know about this mess, but if you contact my daughter again, I'll have no option but to call the police. Raj's world was spinning around him. So this was what the mother-daughter arguments were about. Now that he realized what had happened, it made perfect sense. Why then had his mind jumped to the conclusion that his wife was cheating on him? And the reason Hina was arguing with her mother was that she had somehow found out about her mother's affair? How could he have been so naive to jump to a disturbing conclusion based on a mere happenstance? The only thing Mira was trying to do was protecting their daughter from the pedophile and protecting her sick husband from the stress of the situation. The sudden onset of guilt at suspecting his innocent wife of cheating on him and violating her privacy made Raj sick in his stomach. Having half a mind to close the laptop screen, Raj continued watching what was probably the last hour of his late wife's life. Soon, she would be on her way back home, and her Ford Endeavor would be hit on the rear by a vehicle that would send her spinning towards the river and to her death. Things seemed to be moving in slow motion as Mira delivered the final threat to the physics teacher, and leaving him with his jaw hanging, reversed her car out of the driveway, turning around towards her home as she drove on the highway next to the river. Raj kept his gaze on her rearview mirror, his heart racing. If he was lucky, he'd be able to view the plate number of the vehicle that had hit his wife's car and hand over the evidence to the police. With his heart in his throat, Raj watched several large vehicles on the highway approaching his wife's car, and some of them overtaking it. Resisting an urge to tightly shut his eyes, Raj continued watching the last few minutes of his wife's life. What must be going on in her mind at the time, he wondered. He regretted not telling his wife how much he loved her and how much he appreciated her supporting the family, especially since he had lost his job. He regretted every harsh word he had said to his wife, every missed opportunity to appreciate her. Each occasion he could have been kinder to her. Thinking of their arguments, and every time he had raised his voice at her, made him run with shame. Was this his punishment for not living a purposeful life? For not living deliberately, but but just drifting along the currents of everyday life. Raj sat bolt upright as he saw a vehicle he recognized approach his wife's car from behind. This couldn't be right. Why was the man following her? Raj knew the answer to the question a split second before he saw Segal ram his Mahindra XUV 500 into his wife's car and send her spinning towards the river. Water engulfed the world around him, and he saw the bubbles of air escaping his wife's mouth and nose as the water pressure shattered the windows and rushed into the rapidly sinking car, drowning its only occupant. At some point in time, the glasses drifted away from Mira's face and through the camera. Raj saw his wife's face for the very last time. Some of the guilt that Raj felt for violating his wife's privacy was washed away with the knowledge that he now had the evidence to bring his wife's murderer to justice. Wiping the tears from his eyes, Raj closed the video file and picked up the phone to dial the police. The mistakes we've made. Content. Warning. Some swearing. The only problem with breaking into your neighbor's house is if someone else beats you to it. The Mastersons are gone for the month, summering in Fiji or Acapulco or wherever people go when they're filthy rich and can afford to flaunt it by using words like summering. Before leaving, they'd asked me to watch their house. For free, of course. I smiled and told them they had nothing to worry about. It wasn't until their blue Bugatti sped down our dead-end street that I finally uncrossed the fingers hiding behind my back. Burglary 101. A good heist is all about patience. For 2 weeks now, I've spent night after sweaty July night sequestered in my stuffy attic with my telescope trained on the Masterson house, their backyard swimming pool, their organic vegetable garden, their novelty chicken mailbox. Think Rear Window. Only I'm not as handsome as James Stewart. Why wait so long? Because breaking into someone's house the first week they're on vacation is so predictable. And the second week, even less subtle. But the third week, no one ever suspects that third week, which is probably why, right now, during the middle of the third week, as I'm zipping up my black coveralls and adjusting my ski mask, as I'm stooping down to peer through my telescope, which has become a worse habit for me than day drinking, I can feel my heart free fall its way to the basement. Across the street, the shadow of a person creeps toward my neighbor's veranda. It's almost midnight. Everything is dark outside, like a chocolate cake when you don't bake it right, and the person shines a dim light in front of them. I hold my breath as they reach the door's smart lock. Their fingers bounce around the keypad with all the dexterity of a fat kid in a confectionery shop. Then the numbers light up and the door swings open and they slip inside the house. I wait a few more minutes, expecting to see a light bulb spark to life in one of the windows, when the place remains unlit. I grab my cell phone and a black hefty bag, and then I'm off, gliding across my house to the front door. Think risky business, only I'm not as smooth as Tom Cruise. I'll be honest with you. When I arrive at the Mastersons, fulfilling my promise to watch their house is the furthest thing from my mind. Really, I just don't want whoever's inside to take all the good shit before I get a chance. The smart lock keypad awaits my touch. My fingers move with all the dexterity of a fat kid running a mile. But the numbers still brighten, and the door swings open, coaxed by the passcode that I'd obtained after several months of attic telescoping. Inside, the house is as dark and chocolate cakey as outside. The scent of vanilla lingers in the air, sprayed every 15 minutes via one of the house's 1,000 automatic air fresheners. From the kitchen comes the sound of a cabinet being opened, wine glasses clinking. Using my phone's flashlight, I make my way toward the noise and hope whoever's in there hasn't yet discovered Mrs. Masterson's 60-piece bone china dinner set. I'm not sure what exactly you're supposed to say to someone who's hunched over and dumping a whole drawer of silverware into a burlap sack. So I aim my flashlight at their back and settle for a classic. Hi, how's it going? Nice and casual, not too confrontational, with a hint of politeness. Maybe I am as smooth as Tom Cruise. My words come as the last knife in the drawer hits the bottom of the sack. In an instant, the person drops both drawer and sack, grabs something from their waist, clicks a button. Blue light appears like magic. A thin strand of electricity crackles to life. Pointing the taser gun at me, she shouts, "Put your hands up, and don't fucking move." I'll be honest with you. I've always thought people who talk about love at first sight were full of it. But now, standing there in front of this woman, because there's no doubt the voice belongs to a woman, I get what they mean. Think of the most beautiful woman you've seen. Sandra Bullock, probably. Then imagine her standing there, pointing a stun gun at you in your neighbor's kitchen. Legs like a desert oasis, curves like a rainbow, brown hair flowing down her back as she straightens her trigger finger. Because that's exactly what this woman is like. At least, I imagine so. She's wearing a black latex catsuit and a matching ski mask that make her look formless in the veil of night, even in the taser's blue glow. Not 1 inch of skin showing. But sometimes, a voice is all you need to really know someone. That's how all my previous relationships have started, with a voice. And those were nice, while they lasted. Whoa, 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 I say, taking a few steps back and turning off my phone's flashlight to show her I'm harmless. I come in peace. Who are you? The words bubble like acid rain. My feet take another step back without asking my brain. The taser is still aimed at my chest. I'm the Mastersons' neighbor. I point vaguely in the direction of my house. She starts to close one eye like she's about to open fire, so I add, and believe it or not, I'm here to do the same thing you're doing. Slowly, finally, she lowers her weapon, so now it's aimed at my crotch. It's a small victory. I take what I can get these days. I want her to trust me, so I run my hand along the wall in search of the light switch. If she could only see the hefty bag in my hand, she'd know where we stand. At last, the switch pricks my thumb, and all at once, we're bathed in pure white light. "Cut that shit off," she hisses. And it's like Jesus himself said the words. They sound so beautiful. And so is she, probably. But the light switch clicks, and it's dark again. She looks out the window, swivels her head from end to end of the sidewalk. Then she taps a button on her taser, and the blue crackling is gone, replaced by a regular flashlight, which she shines directly in my eyes. "Are you trying to get me caught? Sorry." "Unbelievable," she mutters, and crouches to pick up her burlap sack, leaving the silverware drawer on the floor. The sliver of moonlight from the window makes her look like an angel. An angel who's approaching the 60-piece bone china collection with my name on it. I rap on the wall twice, and it works. She stops, turns to face me. The moonlight reveals only the left side of her ski mask. "Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot," I say, peeling off my own mask with one hand and offering a truce with the other. "I'm Mac, by the way." She stares at my proffered hand, like she doesn't want to contract whatever form of leprosy I have. The night air is a blanket, heavy and warm around us, filled with the songs of crickets and cicadas. We stand there, listening to the house groan under our feet. Above our heads, the ski mask feels like a dumbbell in my hand. This is usually the part where you tell me your name. No, the woman says, arcing her taser flashlight across the adjoining living room. She marches to the baby grand piano in the corner, no doubt trying to devise a way to wheel it into the night. Okay, I'll just call you Jenny," I say, following her. That was my last girlfriend's name, which is information that was supposed to stay in my head before my mouth sabotaged me. But now it's too late. The words bridge the space between us like a Chinese finger trap, binding us together as accomplices. She pauses, one hand poised atop a stack of outdated sheet music. Beethoven or Bach or Mariah Carey. Turning around, she stares at me behind her ski mask and opens her glossy mouth. It doesn't matter that she showed up to a robbery wearing lipstick. It doesn't matter that she almost tased me 2 minutes ago. My heartbeat quickens all the same, and my blood rushes to places where it probably shouldn't be. Slowly, finally, she says. "Shut up, Max," and dumps the music into her sack. Mariah Carey and all. And it doesn't even matter that she got my name wrong. She could read the yellow pages, cover to cover, and I would listen forever, falling asleep and waking up to the sound of her voice every day. So, yes, I shut up. We shuffle to separate corners of the living room and inspect our potential treasures. And let me tell you, it's the longest 5 minutes of silence in my life. But then, as I'm snatching a handful of angelfish from the Masterson's aquarium and tossing them into my garbage bag, curiosity creeps up on me like it's driving a free candy van. And I can't help but to ask, how did you get past the smart lock anyway? It took me weeks of watching with my telescope to get the numbers. I cringe hearing the word meeks, a hasty overcorrection, when I opted not to tell her how long my spying has actually been going on. Jenny scoffs from across the room, where she's trying desperately to pry a taxidermied deer head from its throne above the mantelpiece. Really? You couldn't figure out 1234? She turns and gives me a dismissive shake of her head. They're boomers. It's not frickin' rocket science. Another candy van question slips out. Why are you doing this? She sighs and stops tugging, but keeps her hands on the antlers. I'm just taking what I'm owed. That's all, she says. Her voice is different than before, softer maybe. I mean, seriously, these people can go to Acapulco for a month, but they can't afford to pay their employees a decent wage. So it was Acapulco, I murmur. You know something? I'd probably be home right now watching Netflix if Ed weren't so fucking stingy. Whether she means Mr. Edwin Masterson or Mrs. Edna Masterson, it's impossible to say. And I don't feel it's my place to ask. I see. What about you? Jenny has given up on the deer head, opting for the floor-to-ceiling bookshelf instead. They aren't paying you right either. I could tell her the truth, that the Mastersons have never wronged me, have always invited me to their cookouts and their Christmas parties, that I'm just a guy with too much time on his hands, all the time in the world, and something to prove, that I'm invading someone else's life tonight to try to find some meaning in my own, that I'm a spineless, indecisive loser, and I'm destined to let the world walk all over me. That last one is what my previous girlfriend told me anyway. Old Jenny. But that was 3 years ago. People can change in that amount of time, right? I would never have thought of breaking into this house 3 years ago. If that's not change, I don't know what is. New Jenny is staring at me, awaiting my answer. Yeah, something like that, I tell her, plunging my hand back into the aquarium. Figures. She flings a tattered Gutenberg Bible into her burlap sack. Hypocrites. Chan. Burglary 201. Always use the toilet before a heist. When I return from the bathroom, couldn't have been in there more than 5 minutes. The living room is abandoned. From the kitchen comes the rattle of a teacup and a saucer. And then I know this woman is no angel. In the kitchen, Jenny stands on her tiptoes to reach the top of the cabinet. She curls a few fingers around a piece of Mrs. Masterson's bone china, a white teacup with floral patterning. It is the penultimate item in the cabinet. "What the hell are you doing?" I say, as she lowers her body, cup in hand. My voice, louder than expected, ricochets off the now empty walls like a pinball. She startles, then slips her present into her sack. A reverse Santa Claus. "What does it look like?" "You're taking my bone china set is what it looks like." Jenny shrugs and points to the lone piece in the cabinet. A plain-looking white saucer with gold trim. "All yours. Have at it." "No." I grab my soggy, hefty bag from its spot by the aquarium, stretch it as wide as it'll go. "Give me half." The air freshener on the wall vomits vanilla mist as Jenny cocks her head. "So?" she says, nodding at the cabinet. "Do you want it or not?" "Half," I demand. She snorts and shakes her head. Done with me. Hauling her sack, she troops down the hallway toward the bathroom. I have to stop myself from grabbing her arm. The equation is simple arithmetic. She has a taser. I don't. The saucer is an orphan in its cupboard, waiting for someone to take pity on it. It's cool to the touch in my longing fingertips. My hefty bag is still gaping like a hungry, hungry hippo. But I slide the saucer in my breast pocket for safekeeping. The toilet flushes, and Jenny emerges from the bathroom, still dragging her riches. She frowns when she sees me standing there. "You know, I think I misjudged you, Jenny. You're not an angel at all. You know that?" Her laugh is like the curtains bulging from her sack, velvety and hideous. "Oh, I'm not an angel." Breaking news? More at 11. Her taser flashlight falls on my trash bag. "What? You think you're some kind of saint? These people aren't my neighbors." "I'm supposed to be watching the house, actually," I confess. "That's really why I'm here. Mr. Masterson put his faith in me." "Well, you're doing a great job." Jenny opens a hallway closet and inspects Mrs. Masterson's collection of mink coats as though she's in a bookstore, contemplating life's hardest decision. Paperback or hardcover? Let me know if you need a letter of recommendation. My face feels like it's summering in Acapulco. The novelty of Jenny's sarcasm has worn off. Now it leaves me grinding my teeth. "Look, I'm gonna step outside," I tell her, tapping the imaginary vape pen in my pocket. "I need a smoke break." 10 minutes, max," Jenny commands, with all the authority of a Walmart manager. I'm still wondering if that meant maximum, or if she'd simply mispronounced my name again when I stumble out into the night. A hot, gentle breeze greets me on the sidewalk, a gift from the passing cars on the next block. My house sits across the street, pale and lonely and devoid of bone china. The telescope in the attic is pointed directly at me, watching. The Masterson's novelty chicken mailbox taunts me. They are all waiting for me to do what it is I actually came out here for. Why not? Why not fulfill my promise? Just so she can walk away with my dinner set while I get to drag some dead fish home. It only takes a few taps of my phone. Then a voice on the other end comes through, high-pitched and much too perky. 911. What's your emergency? Hi. How's it going? Yeah, hey, my house is being broken into right now, I say, and pray this woman doesn't know what Mr. Masterson sounds like as I give her the address. She's got a mountain of questions for me high as Everest, and I listen to myself answer them. Only I'm talking on autopilot because I'm too busy thinking about the two Jennies, old and new. How old Jenny would have called me spineless for what I'm doing now, turning someone in while being part of the problem. How new Jenny came here tonight because she wanted to right a wrong, because she believed in something. At least one of us has a good reason. And that gets me thinking. She can't be all bad, right? Maybe not an angel, but not all bad. She did let me have the last saucer. Maybe we just started off on the wrong foot. Maybe we could get to know each other better. Maybe then she'd even tell me her name. The operator is still talking a mile a minute when I interrupt. Hold on, I think. I think there are 2 people in the house now. Yes, another one just joined. And when I feed her the Masterson's address again, I whisper, "Please come quickly." But I'll be honest with you. That last part is for dramatic effect, just to see how long it'll take someone to show up to a fancy place like this. 5 minutes? 10? What do I care? I have all the time in the world. The operator tells me it won't be long, that they're sending someone right now to come help. She asks me to stay calm and remain where I am. So I stroll to the front door. I can hear Jenny's voice before my feet touch the porch, cussing one of the Eds out as she lugs her sack across the marble floor. Her bone china jingles in the night like a plea, begging my lone saucer to partake. I retrieve it from my pocket, give it a squeeze, and step inside, ready to see the mistakes we've made. Tokyo smoke. Possible triggers: intimidation, slight, mention of drugs and trial. She flicked the wheel of the lighter. Sparks shot up, followed by a small flame which she held to the end of the cigarette dangling from between her lips. Talk. You've got about 5 minutes to convince me to let you live. In that case, Mind if I have a cigarette too? That's executioner etiquette, isn't it? Or is that just Hollywood? Just Hollywood, she said, but offered me her pack of cigarettes with her free hand just the same. Her other hand, the one hidden from view inside her jacket, pointed a gun at me. Not of the Hollywood variety. This was a Nambu M57. It would get the job done. Time's ticking. She pulled back the hammer for emphasis. The clicking sent a shiver through my entire being, commanding every single hair to stand at attention. Would you believe me if I said I did it because I love you? I asked, a futile attempt at lightening the mood. The strange thing, though, was that I meant it. Even then, as I looked at her, knowing full well she'd kill me once the smoldering tip of her cigarette reached the filter. Really, Takashi, you did it because you love me. My dad is in jail, Mom's awaiting trial for complicity, and Itsuki is awaiting whether he'll be behind bars for 5 years or 27. I thought you liked Itsuki. I did. But you didn't, I said, while I tried to light the cigarette I kept in the corner of my mouth. It was true. Although I didn't like him at first, he became much like a brother rather than just an in-law after we got married. I didn't look at her as I said it. I was staring at the graffiti frog that had made its appearance on the wall across the train tracks 2 weeks ago. But I knew the face she was giving me. I remembered every line that appeared on her usually smooth skin. You always complained about how he badmouths you to your dad at every opportunity he got. It's the only reason he was going to take over the company. You're smarter, more experienced, and more ambitious than he was or ever would be. It should have been you, and you know it. As for your da, stop. As for your dad, Hina, he chewed it up, I continued. All of it. She poked me with the barrel of the gun to let me know who was in charge here. That's no reason to have them locked up. True, it wasn't. But it was convenient. For years, even before we got married, she had been complaining about all of them. Her dad most of all. Ever since she was a little girl, she had been preparing to take over her father's company when eventually the time would come. She made sure she got the best grades all throughout primary and middle school. Even at university, she had always been at the top of her class, while on the weekend, she inspected contracts for business deals and saved the company millions by spotting hidden clauses, but none of that mattered. Once Itsuki was born, he was all her dad had cared about. I took a deep drag of my cigarette. Marlboro Gold. I always hated lights. They miss that slight scratching sensation when you inhale. Isn't it though? 5 years ago, during Christmas, when your dad announced that Itsuki would take over your position as CEO, you said you never wanted to see any of them ever again. I didn't mean that. Then you didn't mean it either when you repeated it after he gave you the opportunity to develop your skills elsewhere, for your birthday, I suppose? She was angrily fingering her cigarette, flicking of ash that wasn't there. I could only hope she was a little more careful with the trigger. I still had 3 minutes left after all. Mind if I get something from the vending machine? I asked. Last meal and all that. I got up before she could give me an answer and walked over to the overpriced candy dispenser. I fumbled in my pocket for my wallet that wasn't there. Can I borrow a 500 yen piece, hun? She didn't move, just raised an eyebrow. Fine. I looked around, but of course there was nobody around at this hour. The parking lot was empty, but for 4 cars. I turned a quarter turn and forced my elbow through the glass. Ah, motherfucker. That looks a lot less painful in the movies. I took 3 packs of Pocky from the machine, careful not to cut my hand on the sharp edges. strawberry, matcha, and the regular ones. I wasn't sure which ones you liked best. I thought strawberry, but it could have been matcha as well. Anyway, here's both, I said, and sat back down on the hood of my beat-up Honda Odyssey. She didn't try to take any when I offered the box to her. Just took another drag of her cigarette, which was reaching the halfway mark by now. I always liked the original best myself. I took a drag of my own cigarette before taking it from my mouth and taking a bite of 4 of the chocolate-covered sticks at once. Disgusting. I still don't get it. How can you eat and smoke at the same time? I lifted my shoulders in answer and swallowed before blowing out the smoke I'd been holding up in the air to be carried off by the wind. I never had a problem with eating and smoking at the same time. I knew many people who did, though. Back to what I was saying, I did it for us. In return for the evidence about the shipments of cocaine I gave to Nasanto Corp., they offered me 1 billion yen. 1 billion hina. You'd be rid of your family. We could both quit our jobs and move somewhere else. We'd never have to work again. Tell me that doesn't sound like a dream. You wouldn't have to teach at the high school anymore. No more overtime and compulsory socializing with colleagues. Isn't that what you always wanted? Not like this. They are still my family. And how do you think this will look for me? With my family name ruined? I'll be seen as the daughter of some drugs cartel. My parents weren't like that. They didn't even know about it. The arms of the gold-plated station clock twitched. 10:35. The dial was beautifully decorated with the image of a sun that, in the morning, reflected the sunlight so brilliantly that it seemed to shine itself. Now it was barely visible at all. True, that was Onitsuki, but none of that would have happened if you'd been in charge. Besides, your dad will be out in, 3 years? Your mom's sentence will be even shorter. I doubt she'll even have to do any jail time at all. You just don't fucking get it, do you? You think that's the story the media is going to run with? That it was just my brother, and the rest of us had nothing to do with it? Sure, I might not be seen as an accomplice, but I'm part of that family. You didn't ruin just them. You ruined all of us. Honestly, I didn't get it. Maybe it was because I'd never been close to my own family, or just because we were rich now and could go wherever we wanted. You took my last name when we married. No one will associate you with them once we move somewhere else. Where do you want to go? Osaka, or maybe Kochi? You always loved the beach. Hell, we could even go to Europe. You pick a country, and we'll be on the next flight. My eyes were fixed on the entrance of the empty train station. One of the lights illuminating the statue a little to the left of the gates was flickering and drew my attention. It was a statue of a man, but I didn't recognize him. Over the past 6 years I'd been coming here, I'd never taken the time to read the plaque. "You've got about 1 minute left," she said, inspecting the cigarette clutched between her fingers. "I've got to say, you're doing a real bang-up job so far." The gun was still pressed in my side, but it didn't scare me as much anymore. It was just there. "What would you like me to say? That I'll buy you the most beautiful jewelry, a nice car, a big house with a pool? We can have all that if you want, but you already know that." She let another gray cloud escape from her mouth as she nodded. Then she turned to look at me and gave me another look. "Go on. We could have kids, a boat." She scoffed. "Really? You think having kids will fix this? We tried having kids, remember? It didn't exactly work. We could always adopt them. You used to dream of having a boy and a girl. The boy had to be older, you always said. If we adopt them, you can make sure we get that." She let out a deep sigh. "It's almost time, Takashi. Anything you want to say?" I suggest you say it now. I took a drag of my cigarette as I thought it over. Your last words are hard to come up with on the spot. I took another drag while staring at the statue again. Who is the statue of? Takashi? Her tone was annoyed more than angry. She prodded me with the gun once more. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I looked back at her. Her eyes didn't have any emotion left in them. No love, no anger, no sadness. I still love you. I'd want those to be my last words. I still love you, I repeated. She shook her head. Then, right as she shot away the still smoldering cigarette butt, the 10:38 train drove into the station. I took a final drag of my cigarette and shot the butt ahead of me. That's my cue, sayonara, for the love of murder. The wine glass shattered, and instantly conversations at the table came to a halt. There wasn't even a dull whisper to be heard, the silence utterly shocking. Nervous eye contact was made between the group until their attention was drawn elsewhere. His body was convulsing as foam began to form at the edge of his lips. The shock in his eyes left unchanged, while the pigment of his face turned from white to red, and then horrifically blue. "Somebody do something!" his wife shouted, gripping her husband's shoulders, then ravenously ripping at his shirt collar. The silence then broke, not into conversation, but the sounds of clattering utensils and chairs being pushed aside. Two gentlemen rushed to the convulsing man and lowered him from his chair to the ground. The convulsing began to slow then, until it came to a stop, as did his breathing, as well as his heart. One of the gentlemen placed two delicate fingers on the side of the old man's neck, let out a long sign, and shook his head in remorse. His wife began to sob. Angelina sat motionless across from her father as he struggled to breathe, without even realizing what was happening. Is this one of his cruel jokes? Some way to make the night memorable in his own cynical way? Just hours ago, Angelina and her father were dancing together, him in a three-piece suit, her in her wedding dress. Now he lays lifeless on the floor, blue in the face. Andrew is gathered with the other men. They whisper silently together, most likely deliberating on what to do with the body. Julia, her stepmother, lays upon her father's dead chest and heaves enough breath for them both. Angelina is still. She feels the hammering in her chest, the heat rising the nape of her neck. She is processing what is going on around her, on high alert. She doesn't have the capacity to be hysterical right now. Hysterics won't allow her to justify what has just happened before her very eyes. Her father was murdered. As the men gather in the corner, Angelina clears her throat. Every muscle in the room stops and turns in her direction. Andrew, do be a dear and gather Julia, please. She needn't be so hysterical considering she poisoned my father and her husband. Angelina said, so poised, as her chest break out into hives. Julia leaps upwards, crashing into the table and rattling the china. Her cheeks are streaked with thick black lines as she begins to scream. She lunges across the table where Angelina is sitting, forcing the gentlemen to leave their huddle and offer their assistance with subduing the events that are about to unfold. Angelina sits unscathed. You wretched brat! How dare you say those words and accuse me of such? I will not stand for this in my house, you unworthy fool. Julia's claims come in short stabs as she continues to struggle against the gentleman holding her back. Andrew's father, Leroy, attempts to calm the situation. Now, let us all take a breath. There is no need to point fingers or make such accusations. We do not know what happened, he says. With all due respect, Mr. Montgomery, my father was brutally murdered in front of my very own eyes. in his very own home, and the very day that was supposed to be my happiest, hisses Angelina. We shan't let anyone leave until they either confess of until we can bring the authorities in to decide for themselves. I for one know Julia has been pressuring Father to update his will to denounce me as full beneficiary of his estate since Andrew and mine's engagement. Angelina is wild-eyed now. Her stoic demeanor during the events has dissolved into utter rage. Andrew makes his way to her side. Julia is being restrained by Andrew's brother and father. Her sobs have evolved into a low growl, wolf-like, ready to plunge for Angelina's neck. This is obviously a horrific event, one that cannot be rectified. As my wife is saying, I don't believe this to be pure coincidence or even an accident at that. We were all drinking the wine tonight, were we not? Andrew asks. The remaining guests look amongst each other and nod simultaneously. And yet none of us are exhibiting the effects that overcame Mr. Lawrence. Poison is not out of the question. Father, please alert the staff of what has happened. See to it they promptly head to town to alert the authorities of this situation. As for everyone else, please meet in the main room. We will gather there until further instruction. Andrew guides Angelina out of the dining area, away from her dead father lying on the floor just feet away. Julia couldn't have done this, he whispers so delicately into her ear. She doesn't have the brains to go about navigating poison. She'd end up dead herself before she pulled anything like this off. Angelina scoffs and whispers back, "This is true, if she were working alone." In the main room, the 5 dinner guests gather. Leroy enters shortly after, out of breath, notifying the group that the stable hand has taken upon himself to ride to town to alert authorities. Henry, Andrew's brother, works to start a fire. Julia, with her now untamed hair and cranberry sauce-stained dress, finds a chair in the corner and begins to sob, less hysterically this time. Angelina and Andrew take to the main couch. Elizabeth, Angelina's cousin, rushes to sit beside her. "What is going on?" she whispers urgently to Angelina and Andrew. Their heads all bow together to keep their conversation low. "You don't really think he was poisoned, do you? That can't be. There's no way anyone would do such a thing, let alone to your father of all people. And tonight?" Elizabeth is trying to rationalize the events that transpired not even 25 minutes ago. A large part of her is feeling guilty for occupying most of her dinner conversation with Henry. How could she not, though, with those gorgeous eyes and seductive smile? The way he caressed her thigh during the first course. Julia has to be behind this, Angelina whispers back to Elizabeth. She's always been after Father's money, and now that Andrew and I are officially married, she wants the whole lot for herself. Angelina pinches the bridge of her nose, trying to gather her thoughts. Had she been this desperate for the money, I would have relented. I'd rather have my father alive than his estate. Andrew takes her hand away from her face and entwines her fingers with his. The authorities are on their way. We'll come to a resolution, he reassures her. Julia stirs from her spot in the corner. "Leroy, was that not your bottle of wine you shared with the rest of us tonight? How generous of you." The sarcasm comes off like a knife, and ever so slightly Leroy begins to perspire. Julia continues, "And did you not uncork the bottle yourself? A way of thanks for the marvelous and expensive night Mr. Lawrence threw for your son and now daughter. You took Mr. Lawrence's glass yourself to fill, denying the waitstaff." Everyone's attention turns to Leroy. "Yes, I did bring the wine, uncork the bottle, and pour Mr. Lawrence's glass, but I swear I did nothing of the sort to bring him any harm. I can assure you all that." Leroy dabs his face with a handkerchief. "Father would never do such a thing, Mrs. Lawrence," Henry interjects. Absolutely not. What would be his motive? Andrew is standing now, creating a barrier between Julia and his father. Ever so quietly, Elizabeth utters, "Unless the poison wasn't meant for Uncle." Andrew turns to face Elizabeth. "Elizabeth, what do you mean?" Well, remembering now, it didn't seem like an issue at the time. I had come into the dining room first. All the glasses were askew in various heights. There was no reasoning for their placement. I took it upon myself to arrange the wine glasses from tallest to shortest, starting from the left side. She gasps and places a hand to her mouth. Her eyes widen with a realization. The glass I moved to Uncle's placemat was sitting at Andrew's seat. The room is still, quiet. No one says anything. No one engages in eye contact. As if everyone were looking at their own individual particle of dust on the ground, invested in everything else but each other. Where do their fingers turn when the victim of the incidents has entirely changed? The victim who is standing in the center of the room, his head bowed and hands on his hips, his potential murder amongst them. Angelina stands and makes her way to her groom. She takes his hands in hers and faces him towards her. She slightly strokes his cheek. "Darling, is there anyone you know of that would want to hurt you? Who would do this to you? On our wedding night?" Exhausted, Andrew leans into her. He encircles her waist and embraces her. He lowers his head to rest on her shoulder and says in her ear, "I have no idea, but I am certain we are no longer safe here." Angelina gives a faint nod into him as her eyes scan the room. Elizabeth on the couch, Leroy leaning in the entryway to the main room, Henry standing by the flames watching them dance, and Julia staked in the corner, her face turned toward the window, watching her own reflection. She holds Andrew more closely. Her thoughts are broken as the stable-hand son comes running into the main room, the head maid behind him. Both are out of breath. One of the wait staff has stolen a horse from the stable, Mrs. Lawrence. I tried to stop her, I did. I told her no, she couldn't take him, but she did anyways. The stable-hand son exclaims, "He is barely the age of 10 years old." Who? Who took the horse? Angelina breaking from Andrew and rushing towards the young boy. "It was Priscilla. When we tried to stop her, she pulled out a knife," the maid adds. "She must have been the one to put the poison in Andrew's cup," Elizabeth shouts. "Yes, certainly, but why? What is the motive?" Julia seems calmer now, adding to the conversation. "Why would a young girl so full of life, from a humble family, poison a groom on his wedding day?" Her head turns to face the group. Her eyes narrow onto Andrew. "Andrew, you don't even know Priscilla. Why would she target you?" Questions Angelina. "I haven't the slightest idea. Clearly, she is unwell to have done such a thing. Something so drastic." Andrew replies, shock in his eyes. "But," the stable-hand's son looks at Andrew confused. "You do know her. I've seen you both together, late at night entering the stable. But you never take the horses out, and you always come back picking hay off each other." Julia breaks into her hysterics again, but instead of sobbing this time, she's uncontrollably laughing. "Bloodlust. I was going to kill a man tonight. That's why I went to the party. It was an extravagant black tie affair thrown on a warm, late summer evening at the end of July, hosted by none other than Walter Adler, the richest man in town. Midnight was approaching, and with it, my deadline. I dressed the part, wearing a maroon dress with a corset torso and a slit up the thigh. My makeup was reminiscent of the famous women in 1950s-era America. I was, as they say, dressed to kill. This particular estate had been blessed with a ballroom perfect for gatherings such as these. I was on the second floor of the Galant mansion, leaning over the rail of a balcony overhanging a bar in the center of the house. I was at my perch, an elegant nighthawk waiting for my prey. I surveyed the scene when a beguiling young man leaning against the bar caught my eye. He was an eye-catcher, that's for sure. It wasn't the extravagant, attention-seeking purple suit jacket unbuttoned on his chest that caught my eye, nor was it the loose black tie around his neck, the slicked-back umber-brown hair, or the toothpick used as a substitute for some form of nicotine between his teeth. It was the bloody knuckles, the immature carmine scar along his left arm, and the vague outline of a tattoo of a scorpion's stinger barely visible along the back of his neckline. That's when I knew he was the one. He was described in his profile almost identically to how he appeared. His demeanor confirmed what we knew of his personality, that he was egomaniacal, vainglorious, but unfortunately charismatic, and believes himself to be philanthropic. He was ingenious, devilishly handsome, and beyond intriguing. Surely only he could be the target I was assigned. It was such a shame I was going to have to kill him. There are plenty of ways to murder someone without any comprehension of observation on their part. In order to properly take the life of someone as smart as this particular gentleman, the key is to get him to notice the oddities engraved in your actions while providing enough of a distraction that he chalks it up to a beautiful dame's unfortunate personality. This man was no half-wit, but he was young, attractive, and vain. So I deduced that an old-fashioned plan of seduction would work out beautifully. For me, at least. I turned around and sauntered gallantly through the crowd of laughing and smiling wealthy people, all pretending to have not a care in the world. If their lives were really that easy, I'd be out of a job. I demanded my presence to be conceded to subtly and silently, as I smiled politely at those I walked past, muttering a few phrases of pardon along the way, all the while never taking my eyes off this mysterious, charming stranger. I made my way down the mahogany staircase and along the edge of the room absolutely packed with dancers. I managed to spot the bar at the very end of the room and strolled innocently towards it. I sat in the bar stool next to him, the curious stranger that had become my prey, and waited like a vampire in a doorway for just a few seconds before making direct eye contact. From this distance, he was even more of an engrossing sight. He had dark scruff resembling a goatee on his chin, perhaps a dozen small white scars along his hands, arms, and even one on his forehead, and he smelled vaguely of fire whiskey. Most of all, there was an impossible-to-miss look of a tormented wild beast hiding deep inside his eyes. After making it clear I was sizing him up, I gazed at his unbuttoned jacket and smiled. He started to look me up and down in response before smiling softly and shifting his body to face me while still charismatically leaning against the bar. He thought he was at the advantage point. Little did he know he was walking right into my trap. He was playing along beautifully, yet stupidly all at once. I had no time to waste. I reached out towards him, offering my hand while gazing playfully up into his tortured eyes. I asked delicately, "Care to dance?" He grinned while grabbing my hand and slipping me off of the stool. "What's the name, Toots?" I stepped closer to him, so we were breathing the same air. I became acutely aware of the fact that he was at least 5 inches taller than I was. "Does it matter what my name is, as long as we both have a good time?" He chuckled and grabbed me by the waist while leading me out onto the dance floor. "Fair enough, princess." I was guided by the small of my back to the center of the dance floor as a romantic song began to play. This unfortunate target of mine was a phenomenal dancer. pulling me close, then pushing me away, spinning me around, and then even going so far as to dip me downwards as he gazed into my eyes in a tease. Then he'd stand me on my feet and dance with me normally as if he hadn't just nearly, almost, kissed me. Coming close, but not close enough. Worst of all, he had made me want it, which was a curse so unforgivable I could hardly stand it. Dancing with him felt like heaven, which distracted me more than I'd ever like to admit. I wanted him, when he was the last thing I should be wanting. I was on a mission. I don't feel things. I've never felt things, and I wasn't going to start now. But with him, I was a spider lily, blossoming in the moonlight. If only I had any clue what was really blooming that night. Perhaps I would have done things differently. If that were the case, maybe I wouldn't be dead. He spun me around, gracefully twirling me through a doorway into an empty library, away from the noise of the party. A nice, secluded area where no one could see us. We stopped our dance, and he smiled. "You're a good dancer." I beamed and glanced up at him. "You're not bad yourself." I put a hand on his chest, bit my lip teasingly as I stared into his dark, menacing eyes. "Would you like to go get some air?" He chuckled in response, and I pulled back away from him. Laughter was not the correct reaction. He was straying from my plan. With a smirk, he replied, "How forward of you, baby doll. We've truly been having such a delightful time. I regret to inform you, I'm going to have to kill you." He pulled me closer again by the waist, refusing to let me escape. I furrowed my brows and scowled. The audacity. Who does this insolent, sorry excuse of an enemy mafia's champion think he is? It was my job to kill him, not the other way around. I was going to damn well make sure he knew that. I grabbed him by the tie and pulled downward, forcing him to drop to my eye level. "Watch it, teddy bear. I saw my target first and I never miss." "Bold of you to assume you didn't catch my eye as soon as you walked into the room." He squeezed my waist, spun me around, and pulled me backwards so my back was flush against him, and whispered in my ear from over my shoulder, "Your organization is corrupt. You won't see us coming. The scorpions will strike to kill before you can blink. You're just one of many targets, darling. Don't flatter yourself by thinking you're anything special." His failed attempt at hurting my ego was adorable. I spun back around to face him and wrapped my hands together behind his neck. "You assume I'm one of them. You're either one of them, or they started hiring harlots to do their dirty work." I rolled my eyes and scoffed, but he wasn't wrong. He simply saw through my plan. I grabbed his waist, taking my turn to pull him close and whisper in his ear, "You're handsome, but I'm afraid that's where the charm ends, dear. I'll be the one doing the killing tonight." With that, I unsheathed my dagger through the slit in my dress and held it up to his throat. I tried to slit it, but he held his arm up just in time and was barely preventing me from doing so. He used his legs to kick me in the stomach, and I kneeled over, allowing him to grab the dagger and pin me against the wall from behind. "You're enamoring, glamorous, and clever. I'll give you that. What you lack is the ability to anticipate someone just as enticing, charming, and intelligent as you working for the other side." I found his accusations laughable. With a chuckle and condescending smile, I retorted, "Once again, you're full of assumptions. I'm harder to read than you think. Also, how bold of you to think even for a moment we're anything alike. You'll never be as good as me. After all, I would have killed you by now if I was in your position." He grabbed my wrists, pinning them behind my back, and he dug the blade a centimeter into the back of my neck. I felt the cool rush of fresh blood trickle down and along my spine. As good as you are at what, darling? This strange little game we play, juggling puppets and puppet masters, doing as we're told with no question under these false assumptions that we are making a name for ourselves, doing something praiseworthy, boosting our egos with the blood of our enemies. If we're playing this game, you have to lose to win. You and I are both losers, love. I used my entire body weight to shove into him with my torso, knocking the dagger out of his hands. Would you quit with all of the nicknames? I screamed as he twisted my wrists and pushed me harder against the wall in an attempt at pinning me. He started to breathe heavily in the struggle, but managed to say, "I would, if you'd give me your name." I kicked him hard over and over in an attempt to get him off of me. I practically screamed in frustration. "Ha, fair enough." He pulled us both backwards in a quick, jarring motion, shoved me to the floor as he let go of my wrists, brilliantly giving himself a few seconds of an advantage to bolt for the nearest open window overlooking the evening city lights. I propelled myself against the floor and jumped to my feet, turning to face him, still standing in the window. I didn't bother chasing after him. If he was going to jump out the window, pushing him wouldn't do him any harm, and it was too late to stop him at this point. So, I ran my hands through my hair and smiled. You could always still join me, you know. In a moment, he turned to face the fight-stained room. He smirked as he gazed at me with those haunted, gorgeous eyes. "Sorry, sweetheart, but I'm not interested in your sorry excuse of a mafia. You're nothing but a cult of bastards worshipping Miss Scarlet LaRue. And believe me, she isn't worth the hustle. Until next time, save a dance for me, darling." With that, he fell backwards out the window, resolute, by the shoes. "It's okay. Screw the budget. That's not this year's resolution. You deserve this." When the saleswoman asks you if you've done much running, laugh and gesture to your midsection. The woman will blink, force out a half-baked ha. It's a reaction of discomfort, not cruelty. You made it weird. You don't know why you feel the need to shame your own body in front of a stranger, but you blame it on her Lululemon leggings and air hostess smile. She makes you nervous. Most people do. When you go outside, sit next to a man on a bus bench. He's reading a book, and you recognize the cover from an English course in college. A man's body, clad in red, knight-like armor, with a white mask where his head should be. The mask is smiling and handsome on one side, twisted and snarling on the other, with a hollow void where his eyes should be. The Mysterious Stranger, by Mark Twain. Good taste. When you sit, notice how the man's eyes dash over in your direction. It's almost imperceptible, and no other part of him moves an inch. Convince yourself that the chill trickling down your spine is a sign of an early winter wind. The sweat beneath your arm says differently. Change into your new shoes right there on the bench. They're tight, but almost comforting, reminding you of the cattle squeeze chutes on the farm you grew up on. Your new shoes are white, because white seemed luxurious and fresh and symbolic. New beginnings, clean slate. Now, curse and rub your own spit into a dirt smudge on the side. Remember that white is rarely ever white at all. Think of the stains spreading like mold along shower walls. When the bus arrives, sit near the front. You'll only take it half the way home today and walk the rest. New year, new you. The man with the book sits at the back of the bus. This is your bus stop in a residential area you don't know well. Apparently, it's his bus stop too. Start walking. Notice he is walking too. This shouldn't make you nervous. You always see the worst in people. What is wrong with you? therapy should have been one of your resolutions. It's been 15 minutes, you're almost home, but you don't want him to know where you live. So you walk past the turn to your street and feel your heart drop to your toes. You can smell the fishy stench of your own stress sweat leaking through your corduroy jacket. 20 minutes, almost out of the residential area. In a couple blocks, you'll be on Commercial Drive, where you can enter a cafe or a bar and have a panic attack in a graffitied bathroom stall until the perceived threat is gone. It wouldn't be the first time. When construction blocks access to the street crossing you meant to take, you'll have to find a detour. Luckily, there's an alley to your left, a shortcut to safety if anything. You just need to move fast. Good thing you bought those shoes. When you hear the man's footsteps beating at your heels, run. 2. Eat healthier. Start your day off right with his bento box leftovers. He ate all the shrimp from the noodles and the sushi on the side, but saved you the edamame. That's all right. You didn't need those extra calories anyway. Don't make all that running and fighting from yesterday for nothing. Take a bite. You're not hungry, but you don't know when the next time you'll see food again will be. The noodles are cold, and they slide down your throat like earthworms. Don't complain about the temperature. Your mom always told you microwaves were evil anyway. You crouch over the food on a cold concrete floor. You've stopped crying long enough to take in your surroundings. You are confined to a small circumference around your bed, with a chain clamped around your ankle, the other end of it welded to a rusty metal pole coming out of the ground. The chain rattles with each move you make. Your bed is in the center of a room, bits of foam scattered around it from mice chewing the mattress. Next to it is a bucket, where eventually you will have to relieve yourself, though you'll hold it in until it hurts. There are no windows down here, and it smells like an old boyfriend's basement, a combination of mildew and old socks. Air so thick, you feel as if you could cut into it with a knife. The corners of the room are dark but packed with things. Boxes stacked haphazardly, shelves overflowing with old books, loose papers on the ground. You can't make out what any of the books say on the spine, as much as you try to strain your eyes. So much for that clue. When he tells you to eat, you eat. Whatever he wants with you, he doesn't want you dead. Yet, take comfort in this. Hide the fork from your meal under your mattress. 3. Learn a new skill or hobby. It takes an average of 6 seconds to walk in a circle at the length of your chain. 3 seconds if you run. Count the moths that flicker around the buzzing light bulb above you. Count particles of dust in the air. Numbers were never your thing before. You were an English major once, though that life feels light years away. Divide experiences between before and after. Before, you had a cat. He had a scratchy meow and sprayed on your laundry, but slept in the crook of your arm every night. Before, you had a crush on your coworker Diane, even though she talked with her mouth open, and you caught her stealing from the baking display 3 times. After, you are shitting in a bucket. You curl up on your mattress, thin blanket pulled over your head, and cry. Try making an itemized list in your head of every kiss you've ever had. See if you can remember the script from the 1998 fantasy movie Willow. You almost can. For some reason, this makes you cry too. Go back to counting. The mice stayed hidden for the first couple days, but they're getting bolder. Keep track of every time one skitters over your hand or foot. Of all the horrors you could imagine a kidnapping victim to go through, boredom certainly was not one of them. On what you think could be the 8th day, try something different. You know the man only enters the basement twice. First, to take your used bucket, then to bring back a clean bucket and food. You have been so busy cowering in the farthest end of your chain away from him that you haven't gotten the chance to really observe. Pay attention this time. Start counting when he first unlocks the door. He keeps his eyes on the ground as descends the stairs and approaches to pick up your bucket. It doesn't look like guilt or nerves, but rather he does not seem to regard you at all, as if you are so far beneath him that your presence can hardly be perceived. You almost lose track of your counting, mind reeling. Why are you here at all when he acts as if he wants nothing to do with you? He is as nondescript a man as they come. Brown hair, dark eyes, with short, well-kept facial hair, thin-rimmed glasses, a button-down blue shirt, recently ironed, gray trousers, clean shoes. If you ever get out of this, you're not convinced you could pick him out in a police lineup. When he leaves, he shuts the door behind him, but does not lock it. These seconds are crucial. Above you, at one end of room, you can hear a toilet flush, running into pipes that go through the basement. More water running after that. Then there are footsteps to the other side of the house. He is there for a short time. Finally, the footsteps lead back to the basement door. He has returned with a freshly cleaned bucket in one hand and a tinfoil wrapped burrito in the other. He sets them both down beside you, wordlessly, and then he is gone again. The door is latched tight behind him. 4 minutes and 38 seconds. That's how long the door was unlocked for. Don't forget this. 4. Be more adventurous. Something is different today. Another moth hits the burning light bulb and falls dead into your matted hair. The mice, your only companions, have gone quiet. Upstairs, there is more movement than usual, things being dragged along the floor. Your stomach has been flip-flopping since you woke up. Call it intuition. There is the issue of that pesky iron shackle around your ankle. You made a valiant effort by nibbling off your toenails and using them as lockpicks, but they were too soft and bendable. You thought about breaking your ankle, but your heel would still be in the way. So now, you turn to the other end of your restraints, the metal rod coming out of the basement floor. At its base, it flares out into a square plate, with large iron screws holding it down into the cement. The pole is speckled with a dusty red rust that follow down the first couple links in the chain. A memory flashes in your mind of you as a young girl, loose braids and dirt smudged over your summer freckles. Your dad had an old Chevy parked on the edge of the horse's pasture, weeds growing through the windows. You tried, with all the strength in your little arms, to open the door, but the handle snapped right off and sent you flailing backwards. It left red on your hand, and you thought the car was bleeding. There could be hope after all. You take your shoes from where they've sat dutifully by the bed and put them on. Pull the chain taut, and kick near the base where there is the most rust. Kick again, and again. The rust stains the white of your shoes. Take a break to wipe frustrated tears from your eyes, then try something different. Pull the chain towards you, taut again. Push your feet against the chain. Harder. Your legs begin to shake, and the chain bites into the flesh of your palms. Grit your teeth. Keep pushing. It bursts. You gasp, collapse to the floor, and weep. It's refreshing to cry from joy for a change. When the man comes to change your bucket, sit in front of the pole. Don't let him see you've escaped your shackles. The man raises his eyes to meet yours, and you can suddenly feel every single hair on your body. This is the first time he's looked at you since you were taken. It doesn't last more than a second, but you are shaking. He heads up the basement stairs, bucket in hand. Shake off the chills. Let them roll down your spine and out of your system. It's now or never. With clammy hands, pick up your broken chain and cradle it to your belly. Quiet. You can feel your heat thumping against your ribcage, and you breathe hard through your nose. Leave your shoes behind. Too loud. When you get to the stairs, pretend you are a feather, flitting weightlessly above the steps. Place your ear to the door. Try to hear past the pulsing of your own veins. The water is running. Open the door. 5. Read more books. When you wake up, all you see is a bright light ahead, and with some relief, ask yourself if you are finally dead. It takes a few bleary blinks for your surroundings to come back into focus. The light at the end of a tunnel becomes no more than a light bulb, flickered by the fluttering of wings. You are back in the basement. Sit up. Careful, not too fast. Your head rushes, and dots speckle your vision. You bring a hand to your head to steady it, but when you bring it down, your hand comes back sticky with red. You feel around with your hand some more, find that your hair is matted and clings to your forehead. Beneath the hair is the source of blood. It doesn't seem to be actively bleeding much, and what is there has already coagulated. Beneath where your head was laying, the mattress is soaked with your blood. You shuffle backwards away from it as your breathing grows erratic and shallow. Try to wipe your red hand off on your jeans. The blood is already caking under your fingernails. On unsteady legs, you manage to stand up. You realize that although you are back in the basement, your chain is still broken. Look frantically around the room for a weapon, or another escape you somehow missed before, until your eyes land upon the boxes and shelves. Maybe something in there could help. You hobble over to it, dragging your chain behind you, and throw open the first box you reach. It's only paper, and as you rummage, you leave red smudges and fingerprints all over them. You aren't paying attention to the words, but an image catches your eye. You stop, pull out the paper. It's a diagram of sorts, with labels and instructions in a language you can't understand. But what you do understand is that this diagram looks awfully like a pentagram. You pull out more papers, pay closer attention. Drawings of cloaked figures, goat heads, numbers and lists written in Latin and other old tongues. Box after box, they're all the same. You turn to the bookshelf, flipping open dusty tomes to more diagrams of demons. You toss the books on the floor, and they land with a satisfying thud. You blink back the dots forming in your eyes and steady yourself. Above you, footsteps are approaching the basement door. You lay back down on the mattress and pretend to be unconscious, right where he left you. 7. Appreciate the little things. You peek through your eyelashes. He is painting a pentagram in white on the floor. Beside him is an assortment of strange objects: wax drip candles, fragments of leg bones, a skull, raven feathers in a jar, glass vials of liquids and powders, glistening gemstones. It's almost comical, the most generic, vague Satanism you could imagine. A half-frantic giggle bubbles in your chest, tugging at the corners of your mouth. Bite your tongue to keep it down. His hands clamp down on your ankles and tug. He is dragging you off the bed to the floor just beside it where he's painted the pentagram. You hear the clinking of glass, the rattle of bones, as each object is arranged around your body. Then you can hear his breath above you. Feel his knees at the sides of your legs. He begins to chant. You risk a peek through small slits in your eyelid and see him kneeling over you, book in one hand and a knife in the other. You kick him in the stomach. He gasps and reels back, dropping both the knife and the book. But before you can scramble away, he is on you again, pinning your wrists to the ground. You can feel his hot breath on your face, spit flying out of his heaving mouth. He curses at you and tells you to stay down. Your fingertips brush the edge of the mattress beside you. Remember what you kept from the first day you woke up in this shithole. The fork. 6. Set healthy boundaries with the people in your life. You feel around for the metal, find its handle, grip it hard, then spit in the man's eyes. He loosens his grip on your wrists for just long enough. With utensil in hand, you thrust your arm up until it meets with his neck. The prongs sink into his flesh, as is he, or nothing more than a dense cheesecake. Now, he looks you in the eyes, and you do not cower. You hold there for a moment, driving the fork deeper in, just in case. When you let go, he takes a moment to react. Then his eyes widen, still locked with your own, and he stumbles backwards off of your body. His hand fumbles for the fork. There is blood trickling down onto his freshly ironed shirt. With a shaking hand, he pulls the utensil from his flesh, causing the blood to rush to escape the open wound in thick spurts. He holds a hand tight to his throat, trying to slow the loss, gasping and sputtering. He turns and runs to escape the basement. Get up. Follow him. As he fumbles with the lock on the door, you grab the back of his shirt and pull. In his shock, he loses balance and drops his key on the step beneath the door. He tries to grab onto you as he falls backwards, but you step quickly to the side and cling to the stair railing. Watch as he tumbles down the stairs, landing hard on the concrete below. He struggles to get back up, only making it to his knees as his movements grow more sluggish. You can hear him gargle on his own blood. He clambers towards the stairs again. Pick up the key. Your heart flutters at the click of the door unlocking. Open it. Ahead of you is a hallway, at the end of which is your exit to safety. Don't look back at the man groveling at your heels. Step out, shut the door behind you, and lock it tight.